All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's November 25th, 2020. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the CEO and founder of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your team and then showing them the ropes. If that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered, so feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to the Office Hours channel, as well as follow up with a follow up with an email that you can share with your team. We're also publishing them to YouTube, which is another great place to check them out. So with that said, let's kick this off. I have a bunch of announcements. Bringing up one more thing though from last time. So first is that we are publishing all of these to our YouTube channel. So if you aren't able to make an office hour session, you can always go to youtube.com/c/cloudposse and check out the videos. We're also posting transcripts for the new videos, and we're posting show notes as well. So yeah. So you can understand what to expect in that video. So I will post that to the channel here as well. The next announcement is, let's see here, yeah, we do have a couple of new modules. I announced that we were working on them previously, with the exception of AWS Inspector. This was just, this should be merging any minute now. I guess it hasn't merged yet, but the pull request for AWS Inspector support will be merged today as soon as the tests are passing. We've also merged our PRs and cut the initial releases for AWS Config, GuardDuty, and Spacelift. These what we're doing is we're gearing up for supporting things like PCI and high trust with our modules. So expect that in the coming few months that we will have a lot more support for achieving compliance. We were supposed to have office hours scheduled with Cloudsmith next Wednesday. That has now been moved to the following Wednesday. So now office hours with Cloudsmith will be on December 9th. Cloudsmith is a package repository hosting SaaS that we use to deliver the Cloud Posse, Debian, RPM, and Alpine packages. All right. Another announcement is something that has been talked about a lot, but we're finally starting to make it happen. New modules that we release are using module notation or Terraform registry notation for how we load the modules. So what I'm talking about there is missing. Where is it here? Here. So this is what I mean when I say registry notation. So for those of you using our modules who've been using like the remote Git refs everywhere, and that's good, but it's caused some problems with us and some tools, and like RenovateBot didn't like the syntax of our modules and versions, and frankly this does look pretty nice and clean. So expect us to be rolling this change out everywhere in our modules in the coming month or so. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I just see that you have a typo.
Hey Matt, you hear that? Are you on the call?
I am on the call. I don't know, where do we have a typo?
AWS Inspector, where was the... Oh, maybe in my slides I had that typoed. AWS, no. Yeah, where was the typo?
Yeah, it was when you were showing us the registry notation for the module. registry or something inspector, inspector. I'm sure we'll find it later.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I'll take a look.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is, right there.
This one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, dude. That's why we do these things. Thanks for pointing that out.
Thanks for the live PR.
Live code review. Cloud Posse on office hours. All right. Bonus points.
Line 16.
Yeah.
And that man a t-shirt.
All right. And then I have a personal request that everyone can help me out with. It relates to some stuff that we're doing. I'd be much obliged if any of you upvote my request on this issue, but I'll also explain why this is a kind of cool tool for those of you who haven't seen it before. So the tool that we're using is a terraform-config-inspect, which you can run against a Terraform project, and it'll produce a JSON map of tons of attributes that you don't get from just like running a Terraform graph or Terraform plan. Among other things is you get all the modules that are required and the versions, and we are using this tool now to validate that modules are pinned to the appropriate versions. When we were using the registry, when we were using the GitHub source syntax, like github.com/cloudposse/whatever, that was fine. It was easy to grep and make sure all of our modules were pinned. Now that we're using registry notation, we couldn't do that anymore. So this was a great way for us to add to our test automation a way to validate that our modules were pinned, because we can use JQ to query the output. Problem is they don't want to cut any releases, and I don't understand what's the big deal with it, but so they don't want to cut any releases and they don't want to distribute binaries, and I want them to. So as easy as that. Any questions on Terraform AWS config inspect, how we use it, or what it does? All right. Other news, when this was announced recently, AWS support for network firewalls. That was exciting, especially if you're going after like high trust or PCI compliance. Being able to say you have an actual deep packet inspection firewall that does IDS, that sits around your VPC. That is a nice thing to have. It's different from security groups, which are just blocking traffic. So the Terraform provider for AWS already supports the AWS Network Firewall now, so you can use it in your Terraform code. And I would expect some future announcements from Cloud Posse supporting the Network Firewall in the coming months. Any questions about that one? All right. Here's something that's related to something that comes up all the time, which is, we use a lot of Cert Manager, more so with Nginx Ingress than something else. And Cert Manager is great, right? You can on the fly get TLS certificates for any host name that you have IAM access to and is in your account. But it's also really nice where like you have maybe a lot of dots in your host name. So it could be like pr12 dot myapp dot prod dot mycompany.com. And if you're using wildcards, that only works for one level. So Cert Manager is great for having certificates issued for literally like any host name. The problems with Cert Manager and Let's Encrypt is, well, it's not Cert Manager, it's Let's Encrypt, is that there are extreme, severe rate limits. And the penalty for violating these rate limits is forced downtime until you sit anymore. For example, if you reissue a TLS certificate more than 5 times in a week for a single name, you're rate limited until the average of that goes down below 5. This is a big problem if, say, you have ephemeral clusters where you destroy the cluster and bring the cluster back up, and you need to reissue all your certificates. Unless you had those certificates backed up somehow, very easy to exceed that if you do more than 5 cluster deployments, for example, in a week. Or you're doing development work on a project and you're destroying the namespace and recreating it. That also deletes the secret. So Let's Encrypt doesn't allow you to pay to play, even if you wanted to. Like, you couldn't give them money to raise the limits even if you wanted to, which, that's cool, but it doesn't really make it production grade. So I was super excited when there was an announcement from another company coming out with support for the ACME protocol, which is what Let's Encrypt is based on for issuing certificates. So tools like Cert Manager support changing the endpoint that you're requesting your certificates from. So now you can, for a measly $10 a month, please don't say that's expensive, get unlimited 90-day certificates, meaning no rate limits anymore. So I think it's a viable alternative then. Supposedly Zero SSL, and I think it's a pretty retarded name, to be honest. Zero SSL is like us calling Cloud Posse Zero DevOps. But Zero SSL, they say their certificates are supported by all the major browsers out there, or recent versions of all the major browsers. Any questions on that? All right. And another announcement. Matt, are you on the call? Matt Calhoun, actually, not Matt Gowie.
I am. I'm here.
Cool. Matt, do you want to share a little bit about this announcement? You brought it up this morning. Just high level, what it was about, and why it's cool.
Sure. Basically, you can now, if you're using AWS SSO and you are using a third-party identity provider, such as like Okta or one of the other supported ones out there, you can now send SAML attributes that can be used to determine what resources the user ends up having access to on the AWS side. So, for example, you could send over like department, and then using AWS SSO, you can say anyone that's in this department can have access to these resources with an IAM policy, basically, that gives them access on the mapping identity. So previous to that, you could only do it with groups, where basically you would have to put someone into a group on AWS SSO, and then you could say this group can assume this role. But with the ABAC controls now, you can actually have more fine-grained control over who has access to what when you're using SAML-based federation.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Any questions on that from anyone?
Is that you can assign people groups via ABAC, or is it that the actual resource permissions can be driven off of ABAC, like attributes that you pass through your SAML configuration?
Yeah, so basically you can do a mapping from the third-party IDP into AWS SSO. So and then you can use the attribute that ends up in AWS SSO to actually give permissions to resources. So you can say like, these people that have department of development only have access to resources like the EC2 instances who are tagged with like department equals development or whatever, something along those lines. Sorry, I'm trying to come up with an example off the top of my head.
Yeah. No, that's a good example, but it goes beyond like the permission sets and the groups. It's just like you can specify an IAM policy that says that.
Yeah, it's basically it's an actual ABAC policy. So there's an example right there on the end. So if you can see on the end, the condition of that policy is actually saying that this condition is saying that if this user has the resource tag of department, then or the EC2 instance has that, that matches the principal tag. So the principal tag is the thing that's coming from the IDP. So if those two match, then that's the condition that you grant access. In this case, to start and stop instances on all EC2 instances. So.
Second question, are you folks even, is Cloud Posse using AWS SSO, or are you using just the SAML?
We've been blocked on this functionality. This is what we've really wanted. So we are, Jeremy is reevaluating this as we speak. And we're going to make a judgment call next week, probably, if we add support for it right now. But it's definitely something I would like to move towards, because using like SAML to AWS is not a stable user experience for using SAML with AWS. It relies on scraping most of the time, with like G Suite at least, and G Suite rolls out new releases, and then you can't log into AWS anymore, and that kind of sucks. And having a console way of doing login would be really nice, and I think with AWS SSO, that might be more of a possibility.
I'd like to turn this, around to the audience and ask: is there anyone out there using the AWS Okta SSO, the Okta to AWS SSO integration rather than the SAML integration? And what's your experience been with that? We're concerned about what ends up controlling the IAM roles that are created in AWS. No hands. All right. Well,
no
we're
taker.
not the only ones who don't know. We will figure it out in the coming weeks. We have a couple of clients interested in it, and we'll have some answers, before Christmas.
Yeah. All right.
It's worth pointing out AWS SSO relies on SCIM to do synchronization of users and groups between the external IDP and the internal AWS SSO one. And Google, as of yet, does not support SCIM protocol. So you still have to use a third-party synchronization tool if you want to use Google with this. But almost all other major IDPs do support it. So hopefully Google will get there one day soon.
I wonder why they don't. Any theory on that?
Yes, but it's conspiratorial. They probably don't want to make it overly easy to log into to AWS with that, because it's one of the only things that really relies on it right now. But they're also slow to move, to make any changes to their directory structure and all that kind of thing. So it doesn't surprise me.
All right, makes sense. Well, that was the end of my announcements. Anybody else see any interesting announcements this week they'd like to bring up for the group? Or Matt, were you about to say something?
No, I just realized that my camera was off. I didn't realize it was off.
Oh.
Sorry. I just went on a big speech.
All right. So I'm going to move into then some questions. Brian, you're on the call today. Brian Tai?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. So let me take a closer look. I think when I skimmed your question earlier, maybe I missed the point. So I'm going to see here when I read it. Let me bring this over into focus here. Brian is asking, is there a best practice to follow with regard to Helm files in terms of using inheritance and keeping things dry? So currently his setup is a remote mono chart. So Cloud Posse has this pattern of a mono chart I can go into later with zero assumptions made, i.e. only default labels like app, which refers to the common name of this chart. So, however, I have a bunch of services that essentially follow the same pattern. All use the traffic ingress annotations, a Redis pod, etc. Using the traffic ingress annotation, instead of having all those annotations copied to every service's Helm files, should I have a remote parent Helm file? And can I even reference, I mean, if this is a thing, or should I have a separate mono chart with more assumptions and all the default traffic ingress annotations I want, etc. So my opinion on this would be to not for this purpose. This is like for let me take a step back so everyone's on the same page. First, introduce the concept of this mono chart, and then answer the question in context of that. So mono chart is a convention that we've adopted at Cloud Posse. It's a kind of Helm chart that we use, which is generalized as a subset of the capabilities of a Kubernetes manifest, and it exposes only what you typically use in Kubernetes. This is our mono chart is hyper opinionated to Cloud Posse, but with our customers, we help them adopt their own mono chart strategy, which can be more simple or more opinionated. So things you do in a mono chart is like define the interface for how you deploy to Kubernetes. Do you want your apps to always be deployments? Do you want to have your apps always define an ingress? Do you want your apps to always use config maps and depend on secrets? Do you want your apps to depend on local storage in some kind of way? You abstract that away so that when you deploy an app, you just pick the mono chart, you set a minimal set of values for your chart and deploy it. So an example of what that looks like is if we go into Cloud Posse Helm files. I'm going to search for, in here, I'm just going to search for mono chart. So so here's an example of deploying Lighthouse CI using our mono chart. So sometimes, here's the thing, sometimes vendors provide charts and they're great and they support annotations and they support you disabling the ingress and they support any other little things you want to do. And sometimes they just suck. But they do provide an image, and I'd rather not at least manage the Docker image, but we can use our mono chart. So in this case, I don't remember the backstory of why we are using mono chart for Lighthouse CI, but this serves as an example of how we can do it. So we're just referencing the Cloud Posse mono chart. We're specifying the image. We're specifying that we want it deployed as a deployment. We want a rolling update strategy, and we are modifying the args that we invoke the container with. We set the resource limits. We pass our config maps. We enable some Postgres, setting here, and persistence and ingress. So it's similar to what you could do in Kubernetes natively without using the mono chart. It's a simplified subset of the patterns that we use that we can then document and communicate to the customers. So now let me put that in context to what any questions so far before I get into putting into context with Brian's question? All right. So one of the things Brian is doing in deploying his apps consistently in his company is always specifying the annotations that he needs for traffic, or annotations needed by Redis, and possibly other labels, and it can grow from there. I think that this is where you're defining the interface for what it requires to deploy an application in your company's environment. So I think it would make sense for you to define your own company's chart that has those as required settings to pass. Jeremy points out you can use bases in Helm files. Bases are a great way to kind of import layers that you have shared in other YAML files that get combined. We use bases. I'm not sure if we have an example right now in our Helm files repo here. I think we try and leave bases out of this part of the implementation. Yeah, we don't in our Helm files.
Yeah, we don't have any public bases.
Yeah, all our bases are used in customer implementations. Are you familiar with bases and what they can do, Brian?
I'm not too familiar, but I guess I was curious whether people are using. I saw like a issue that you opened with Helmfile a couple years ago, talking about kind of using remote Helm files, which got me wondering like what people thought, whether to like have a remote Helm file with these assumptions already made, like all the annotations already filled in for us, and that one would use
Oh, I see. Sorry, I got you a little bit better now, and yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically wondering like which one do people prefer, because I know a lot of people here use Helm files, so I assume that maybe some already have a good opinion on what is a better approach, like put the assumptions in the mono chart or have a parent Helm file that has those annotations already, for example, and then just reference that parent Helm file for every service.
Before I chime in, I want to give other people an opportunity to say how they're using Helm file. Or not. Okay, so yeah, I mean the remote Helm file thing was probably the biggest game changer for us in using Helm file. I mean, it's been there now for years, but remote Helm files make Helm file work like Terraform modules. And we've by the way, this is a good announcement for everyone else. We've republished all of our Helm files about 2 weeks ago. Our previous Helm files that we had are still there. We moved them to a deprecated folder. We were not personally using these in new engagements. These were on like life support for maintenance for other engagements. But all our latest Helm files that we're using in our engagements are now here. All of these have been updated to use Helm file environments as opposed to environment variables. So when we want to deploy like the reloader, we can reference this remote Helm file. And this remote Helm file has defined is using environments for all the values. So values corresponds to environments. And then you can define your own, then locally you define what your settings are. So what's really nice about this is you just get a very minimal declarative experience for how to deploy given Helm release. So I guess the answer there then, Brian, becomes, I guess it depends.
That YAML file is kind of the size that I'm looking for, right, for every service, because they're all essentially the same type of type of service. You know, like if you're a company, maybe everybody builds tiny Go services. For us, it's like tiny Django services and tiny JavaScript, React front end, Django backend services. So like they're all the same, but they're running different applications, and really just the name and the image is different, right? And like maybe like some of them require more CPU requests or things like that, but generally everything is about the same. And I didn't want to have like a 100-line Helm file if I could avoid it, and then copy that to every single service that we're deploying.
Yeah, I agree with that. So instead, what you can do with remote Helm files, just since not everyone has maybe seen what that looks like, and let's see if we should have an example here, but I think we might have removed that example because it was a little out of date. Where do I have an example? That's public.
So while you're looking for that, so now that you better understand my question, would you suggest adding those assumptions in the mono chart or in the remote Helm chart, or in the remote Helm file?
I think so. I think that assuming you don't control the mono chart, then I would just stick them in the Helm file. You don't have to fork, and it just works.
Yeah.
And then here's an example on my screen of Helm files. Except this is not remote, but just imagine this being a Git URL.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. So now your apps can just have a single file like this defined called Helm file, which says, I need this version of Helm file from here. I need this version of Helm file from here, and you can set the values locally. But the definition of all that wall of YAML for how to deploy a Helm release can be remote and centralized.
Yeah, so my thinking was like I really wanted to minimize the amount of changes I would make to the like very base mono chart Helm chart.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of wanted this second layer of like a parent Helm file. So because if you make a change to that mono chart, then like essentially every service that uses it, you'd either have to like upgrade the version for every single one or point it to the new git ref. And like I wanted to I didn't want to necessarily make like have that like those type of changes to be made to the mono chart as frequently. Like if you have a parent Helm file or multiple parent Helm files, then those changes have a smaller subset of services that use that parent Helm file.
Yeah. No, that jives with our thinking as well. Anybody have questions on what Brian's asking or anything to add? All right. All right, so let's open it up then to the floor. Let me check the sweetops office hours channel. If you haven't yet joined the sweetops Slack community, just go to slack.sweetops.com and you'll get the ability to register and then go to this office hours channel here. All right. Okay, no new
It's the other way around, right? Sweetops.slack.com.
No, because if you go to sweetops.slack.com, you can't register.
Oh, right.
So, yeah. And some places you might see slack.cloudposse.com. Same thing. Same site. All right. Any questions anybody's been having or struggles? I will. I did see a question here. It was brought up earlier. It was a coding question. I think we're gonna punt on those. It's just really hard to discuss those with such a large group and to get context. So why don't you go ahead and David, if you're on the call, I think you asked this maybe already in Terraform. I'll just give it another day or so, and somebody will help answer. And if anybody knows the answer right away, looking at this, feel free to comment in a thread below the message. All right. No questions? Putting me on the spot here, guys. Matt, come on. You always have a question for me.
I'm sorry. I can only make myself look like a noob so many times.
We can ask about interest in, we released the Debian Geodesic. We're going to introduce CentOS Geodesic. People interested in other base OSs.
Yeah, it's worthwhile. So also bringing it up again. So Geodesic is, our cloud automation tool shell, and it ships with Terraform, Helm, Kubernetes, kubectl, all the tools that we rely on that come from our package repository. We have just added support for Debian, and I believe do we have the pull request open, Jeremy? We don't have it open yet, but it will be open in a week or so for CentOS support, and any other flavor would be very easy for us to add. So I think this is great because we can now, use an image that's closer to what we might be familiar with than Alpine Linux. Anybody has anybody using Geodesic here? Anybody excited about seeing other distros supported?
I would like to use Geodesic, but I have not. Feel like it needs better documentation. Sorry for the.
No, that's a fair snub. It's totally
public
fair
feedback.
Snub. Yeah. No, it's a fair snub. It could. Honestly, there's nothing to it. It's just a glorified Docker image, literally a glorified Docker image with a bunch of commands in there and helper scripts. Whether you use those or not is optional. But yeah, this is Geodesic. It's really just a Docker image that installs a bunch of packages. Unfortunately, it's taken us 555 pull requests to get to something simple. So
Yeah,
I
so
think it'd be cool to see sorry to interrupt you, Jeremy,
a demo.
but I think
Yeah.
it'd be cool to see a demo of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
be the thing that where I think the rubber would meet the road for a lot of folks.
I think it will.
it's also time to update that animated GIF. But the basic thing I think about is when I'm trying to work in a Kubernetes cluster, if I just download a Debian image or an Alpine image or any image, it doesn't have any of the DevOps tools that we need pre-installed. I have to go and install them. Half the time I have to install curl, right? So this is just Alpine or now Debian image preloaded with all of the DevOps tools we use every day. It's nothing more than that. It's not like any super special server or anything. What does have a few little extra things that we like to use, but you don't need to use them. The main point is that it has a consistent set of tools pre-installed, so that your commands, whatever you're working on, you just go into this Docker image. You have your AWS client, you have your JQ is installed, curl is installed, wget's installed, all the stuff that you want to use every day is installed. Helmfile, Terraform, etc.
And if
Now,
it's
that's
not, we probably have a package for it, so you don't have to go dig it up. That's
right.
all.
That's the other thing. We have packages for all the other tools, so you're not expected to use Geodesic directly. You're expected to use it as a base image. You create your own Docker image where you add the other tools that you want from our packages repo or any other way that you want. And then you have your own custom toolkit, which you can just download and use anywhere.
So in reflection, I think maybe it's a naming thing. Calling it a cloud automation shell, that's how we use it. But really, it's like a DevOps Linux distro. Like their Linux distros for security, their Linux distros for CIS or whatever. But yeah, this is the distro for DevOps, and it's because we don't want to step on Debian or Ubuntu's or Alpine's shoes. We just build it to strap on to any one of those other distros, and then add the packages that we care about for our industry.
That's interesting because I was totally seeing it as a fully local development tool, or a local toolkit. And now, Jeremy, your example is like you would actually launch this in your cluster, and then you would kubectl exec into it as a way of just like interacting with other services. So I guess that it is
exactly. So one of the issues we have is that we have Terraform that goes and provisions databases and database users inside an RDS. But all of the RDSs we deploy don't have any public access. They're only accessible inside the VPC. So we can't run that Terraform from anywhere but the VPC. So we create the geodesic image with the Terraform loaded into it, the Terraform, the HCL, and all the configuration and everything. We make that image. You can load, this is not what we recommend in general, but during development, we'll load that image manually into the cluster and run the Terraform commands from within the image, from within the cluster. And that gets us access to the database so we can do the provisioning that way. Normally we would do that as part of a CICD that also is in the cluster, or like a local, an enterprise instance of Terraform Cloud or something like that.
Yeah,
but this is a way that you can, do it manually.
Cool.
Maybe we should publish a geodesic AMI image, and then you can actually just launch an EC2 instance with it.
You're joking, but no.
But I actually wasn't joking.
Oh, okay.
I said it half like smiling, but
Yeah.
I was thinking like that would be useful.
Well, it actually, I don't know that it would, because it doesn't actually do anything. That's the thing. Geodesic image doesn't. It's only useful as a shell.
Right,
Well,
but I'm
yeah,
saying
but a
then
bastion
SSH
server
into
or
it, and
yeah.
then do all the stuff you need to do.
Yeah, as a bastion
Yeah.
server, admin server,
Yeah,
something like that.
exactly.
As a bastion server is what I was thinking when you said it.
Me too.
I like it. It's kind of
Oh yeah, I guess that would be pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, good idea. And it would just be like a simple GitHub action to do the Packer build there and distribute it that way as well.
Especially now that we can have the Debian base, that would be nice. Yeah.
Well, now we have to make it work on Amazon Linux.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the next thing. Amazon Linux and
Well,
preferably
once we have-
the hardened CIS hardened version of it.
Yeah.
once we have the CentOS support, right,
Yeah,
Amazon
then it's
Linux
easy.
should be pretty straightforward.
Hey, I have a dumb question, or no, a noob question.
Yeah, go for it, Patrick.
I noticed, what is the purpose of the contexts in all the modules? I noticed that you added that context.tf, and I looked at it and just, I bet you give me a quick,
Yeah,
what the purpose of it is.
yeah. I'm going to start just showing a quick example. Actually, the master of it is on the call right now, so I'll turn it over to Jeremy in a second. I just wanted to show like why it's kind of cool is I opened the wrong file. So are you well, I'm going to start from the beginning. All of our Cloud Posse modules use something called Terraform null label. It's called
Yeah,
null.
I use it.
Yeah, it's called null label for historical reasons because it was based on the null provider, and Terraform modules are supposed to use that. Terraform advanced as a language, we don't need to use null anymore, and it's a relic from that, but it's not worth renaming it and adding extra confusion. So an example of that is if I look at like our public subnets, and so we make sure all of our resources can be deployed any number of times in an AWS account without having to worry about the author necessarily being consistent about how he's naming his resources. So by defining a label, now this happened to be a more advanced example where here we're adding tags to an existing map of tags, and I wish I had a simpler example right off the bat, but we used to have.
This all makes sense. I use this module for like all my Terraform stuff.
Yeah. So it used to be that, you had to specify all 15 parameters to invoke this module. And what happened was that some modules would invoke 5 of them or pass 5 of them. And some modules would pass 10 of them that were updated. And it was really hard for us to manage all of these parameters to define a label. So like the order of your labels, the name, namespace, stage, the tags, the environment.
The
whether
ID
it's
length
enabled-
limit is the other thing, is
Yeah.
that this was recently added, and now we want to add that feature. It was recently added. We want to add that to all 135 or so of our Terraform modules. How do you do that easily when everything is cluttered up in these individual assignments scattered throughout files, not even all in main TF?
Yeah. So having a consistent interface to all of our modules, and context.tf enabled that. It was an epiphany kind of Jeremy had a little while ago where we were defining all those variables in just variables, but then we were commingling them with all the other variables the module defined. And then you had to be the human differ to figure out like what was missing or not. So instead now we just export a single context file like this one that we vendor into every one of our modules. And I would say like 60% of our module, I don't know, 50% maybe have been updated to this. We're going to get 100% updated in the next couple months to use this because it's a must-have. It's the only way we can scale having this many modules and having a consistent interface to use them all. One of the things I absolutely love is that we now have this context in every module that uses it. So you can always just call module.this and get the namespace and get the environment and get the stage and get the tags and get that normalized. And then
enabled is also a huge.
yeah, and enabled is a huge thing. Yeah. Yeah. So a consistent way of knowing if you've had the feature flag for enabled there or not.
So all
And
of
then-
our modules have a feature flag for enabled now. And that means that when you enable or disable that module, all of the modules it is using get enabled or disabled automatically.
Recursively. Yeah.
Cascading.
Yeah. Yeah. Cascading, better word. Correct word. And then the context. So then we take this map that we have here, and now you can always just pass it by context, by reference, kind of.
The comments above explain how to use it.
Yeah. Here we go.
I will say that this is one of my favorite new things because, now you don't need to make a ton of labels in your root modules. You can just create one, context. You can copy this file or you can create a label manually and then, pass around context and then provide overrides in, specific resources in root modules. And it's really, ends up making it ton less. There's a lot less usage of individual labels, and it's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So this could limit like right now in some repos I'm using the module like 5 different times because of the amount of differences that I need between.
Yeah.
So by using this, I could limit that.
So now you can with less code expressed, you can just say like
Attributes public is exactly right.
Yeah.
So we're using this module to label both the public subnets and the private subnets. Right. And so the way we do is we reuse this label, this context, but we add the attribute public for the public subnets and private for the private subnets, so they get different names.
All right, I totally just understood everything now. My brain wasn't connecting everything. Awesome.
So what most people do is they do string concatenation. Under the hood, we're doing that. The problem is there's a variance of how people want their labels to look like, and this supports all of that. And like if you want to use dashes or not use dashes. And another example is to null label. We have a open PR. This is more like a proposal right now, is from the community. But he wants to add a feature flag to enforce lowercase tags. And that's a case. What if we instead expanded this so now we can support title case, lowercase, uppercase, snake case, and it's just setting one feature flag when you invoke the module in the first invocation of the module, and every resource name generated thereafter follows your strict convention on how to generate labels.
Does the module support a colon in the key name?
We don't. Well, so that's a good question. I don't know if we strip out. I think we have some. Well, here to answer your question, and that's another good incidental question. I'm just getting back to my. All right. So a normalization is part of what is in scope for the module, and that's ensuring that labels don't have characters you're not allowed to have. And it's somewhat opinionated, and some characters are available in some situations. Here is our default allowed list of characters, but you can just override this at the root level with the characters you allow.
Cool.
And then the regex is changed. So by default, it's alphanumeric with hyphen.
In the
Thank you.
In the previous examples, where was the dis defined, like module.dis?
Say that one more time.
It's defined in the context.tf file.
Oh yeah, so let me show how you do use this now. So every one of our modules now, like here's like this Terraform AWS dynamic subnets. We copy in the context file. This is vendored into each module. And we have a disclaimer at the top saying, don't edit this file, right? This is the authority of it.
And it's right there on line 21 is the answer to your question. That's where it's defined.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, exactly. So there's.
Cool. Yeah, okay, I understand now.
So the other thing we have, it's a work in progress, and I forget, I don't know where we have a PR where we're testing it. I don't know if it's been merged yet. So on a nightly basis, we're going to automatically update context in every one of our modules. So we merge a change to Terraform null label. That'll percolate out throughout all of our modules in 24 hours.
How are y'all doing that?
We use a GitHub action that has a workflow to update it, but I don't. Here, I think it's right. It has. This is like what I'm talking about right now is cutting edge. So I don't. See if I have it here.
Oh, via Renovate?
No, so this is I'll link it. This is what we're doing. It hasn't rolled out yet. This is what's going to be up as part of upgrading all of our modules to verify or validate Terraform 0.14 support. We're also going to be adding this workflow, and this workflow runs on a nightly basis against master, and literally downloads the latest version from null label. Rebuilds the README in case any new variables were added, and then creates a pull request to a branch called auto update, context.tf. And to answer your question, then Mergify sees that new pull request, and this is a test branch that he's working on, will automatically comment on the pull request. I don't know where it is right now. There's something that's going to automatically comment on the pull request to run the tests. And if the tests pass, then Mergify will automatically merge the pull request from the automated bot user. So
Cool, that'll simplify things.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. The other thing we've done is, I think it came up related to this, is like, if you use Mergify and use Renovate Bot, you have to use code owners for security reasons, right? To gate what happens. And as we learned, if you have any problems with your code owners file, you don't see this lock symbol here that is protected. It's very subtle. So what we're also going to be rolling out are GitHub actions to validate the code owners file. So there's a GitHub action that makes sure that syntactically it's correct, because you bungle one thing in there and now you lose all that security that you had. It's like an IP table rule that if you have one wrong IP table rule, fails to allow everyone.
Did you run into that issue?
Yeah, we ran into that issue with our code owners file.
On what
Sadly, I left a line uncommented, a comment line. I left the comment symbol out, and it disabled the entire code owners file.
Cool. Did somebody get a merge-in that they should not have?
No.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we didn't have an incident, but we discovered that it's easy to miss. With the syntax highlighting, it's easy to see that it's correct. Without the syntax highlighting, you can still miss it possibly in a review. And that's what happened.
And there are other things that can go wrong. I think it may disable the code owners file if you reference a team that doesn't exist. And we did that too. It has to be a public team. A private team doesn't count. And we referenced a private secret team. That caused problems.
And the validator detects that. The validator detects you're using a private team.
I also saw there's now a GitHub action to validate code owners as well that you can just call.
Or this is a GitHub action?
Yeah, but there's
an official one?
I think it's an official one. Oh, it's marked as pre-release.
Interesting.
When I was just looking at it before. So that would be cool.
Under the GitHub Actions org?
Yeah, I thought I just saw one there. Maybe I clicked too far. Isn't there? Yeah, I'll see if I can find it again. And
that'd be cool.
I actually thought I saw it yesterday when I was looking at it. I'm not looking at it right this second.
Yeah, share that. All right, we only got another couple minutes left here. Any other questions, insights?
Anyone had any issues switching from AWS CLI v1 to v2?
No, that was pretty seamless.
One of the questions we have is, should we install both in Geodesic, or just right now we only have v1? Should we just upgrade to v2, or should we install both?
Does v2 provide back API like CLI interface backward compatibility?
There are some breaking changes.
Yeah, they're definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll probably will install both so that our existing scripts can use the old one.
Yeah.
I came up with something to talk about, but it's probably something for next time. But how are folks, and I think I know the Cloud Posse answer, but I think I know the answer in general. It's just such a pain in the ass that it's bugging me. But internal services, things like Elasticsearch in a VPC, AWS Elasticsearch in a VPC, or accessing an RDS database that's in a private subnet. I think you folks are using Teleport. Boundaries, the new option, but both seem heavyweight to me, and I wonder if anybody else has a better solution out there other than port forwarding through a Bastion host, or installing something that's across your entire cluster,
or the agent approach or the runner approach, like using Terraform Cloud Runners.
Well, yeah, that's for programmatic access, right? Like you want to apply something.
Yeah, GitOps.
Yeah. But I'm saying more, like I'm just spinning up a Elasticsearch cluster in a VPC, and I'm realizing, wow, they make this a huge pain to get to access to Kibana. So for my team, I have a client team that they know how to do some stuff, but some of them are going to struggle if I have to tell them, hey, you need to port forward each time to get access to our Kibana instance. That seems painful.
What about a VPN?
The VPN, I think, is I don't know.
Their VPN is really expensive.
AWS VPN is super expensive, but then just in general, VPNs feel antiquated. Like I don't like introducing VPNs to solve problems.
You could use
I agree that it's definitely a solution, but it just sucks.
What about like a zero trust approach with like the Duo network gateway or similar solution?
Yeah,
Maybe that's something to look into. If you don't mind posting a link about that in Slack, I would love to read on it. Sure.
And we use pre-tunnel sometimes, which is free, and even if you pay for it, it's like $500 a year or something. PRITUNL as a VPN server. It works pretty well.
It's only annoying because it's a MongoDB base, but yeah. Otherwise, it's pretty good.
Yeah. We did get it worked. We did get it working with Atlas for a particular customer who had that. But yeah, it still sucks that you have to have that dependency. But state needs to be somewhere.
Yeah.
I,
I'll look into
I guess
SAML. That's a good one.
I don't know if anybody's tried using it with Document DB. I don't know if it'll work.
I mean, the other, oh, sorry. I was going to just say the other thing that I've seen, obviously it might seem a little antiquated, but you could also like reverse proxy it, like with whatever you have out on the edge, like an API gateway or Nginx or something like that, along with like some sort of basic auth to protect it.
Yeah, and I've definitely thought about that, just like putting Nginx on the Bastion host and then going that route and exposing it through an ALB.
That's actually exactly what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Void Surfer, I saw your question here. You're dipping your toe with the Terraform AWS TF state backend module, and you're having trouble getting it to create the bucket. We can't go into exact triaging your particular issue. I just want to address the second part of your question. Is there a repo configured that has this as a working example? And all of our modules that you would come in touch with have automated tests, so they're validated on merge to master that they work. But the tests that they run come from examples complete. So if you look at the examples complete here, you'll see a sample invocation of that module, and hopefully that maybe gets you started.
That should do it. Thank you.
Cool. All right then. Well, I think we are out of time then for today. I'd like to wrap up by just thanking everyone for participating in the conversation. Here are some links to check out in your research afterwards. If you want to check out the past office hours recordings, head over to youtube.com/c/cloudposse. We definitely appreciate subscribers. It helps us increase our tier at YouTube. So if you can subscribe, we'd appreciate it. If you haven't joined our Slack team yet, head over to slack.cloudposse.com or cloudposse.com/Slack. It's pretty hard not to find our Slack team out there and join that. Also, if you like what you heard today and would like some time with Cloud Posse, feel free to head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to book a session with me, and I look forward to talking with you. Anyways, with that said, we'll have office hours again next week at the same time, same place, every Wednesday at 11:30 Pacific. And happy Turkey Day for those of you in the U.S. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and hope you get to spend it with your family. Take care.